morning webinar. This, the beautiful July 26th, 2017. We're honored to have all of you here with us. My name is Scott Terry. I'm coming to you from our Nature Sunshine home office in Lehi, Utah. We're, as mentioned, honored to have everybody here. Just a couple quick notes before we turn our topic over to Dr. J. We do have a copy of his slides available for you to download if you would like. If you look at the little orange box rectangle on your screen, it has an arrow in it, a white arrow. If you click on that orange box, your panel should expand, and towards the bottom of that expanded panel, you'll see an option for you to download Dr. J's slides to your computer. That way you can follow along if you would prefer, print them out later, share them, whatever you may like to do. But those are available for you to utilize and enjoy. What day did I just say? It's June 26th today. Thank you, Barbara. I'm not sure what I just said, but yes, it is June 26th. Thank you. Also, we do want to encourage you to stick around right to the very end of our webinar. Dr. J has some great information that will take the bulk of our time. We'll then pause and take a few questions from you that have any questions that you may want Dr. J to address. We'll try and take as many of those as time permits. But then, following our questions, Dr. J has some bonus material that he'll be sharing with us as we conclude our question and answer. So please stick around until the very end. You'll be glad that you did. With that, Dr. J, the webinar is yours. We'll sit back and enjoy learning from you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see some of you are still signing on, so hang on your hats. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to this topic, the microbiome approach to wellness and how it takes guts to be healthy. So hang in there. You can take a few notes, but I encourage you to go back and listen to this from time to time. This webinar is also available in different forms on Nature's Institute, who is bringing you this presentation. And this is me. I hail from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I don't know about you, but it's a little chilly here, if you can believe it or not. We've been in the 50s all day, which is a shock in June. I'm sure people from the West Coast and Phoenix would love to have that problem. But so anyway, I have a doctorate, PhD in integrative medicine, a doctorate in humanitarian services, a doctor of integrative medicine, and board certified holistic health practitioner and certified reflexologist. And that's just a small sampling of all the stuff I've done for a while. But anyway, just to let you know who I am, those who do not know me. We're going to start out with the ancient understanding from Hippocrates, who was considered the father of medicine about 2,500 years ago. And you know, he said a lot of great things. He said it best when he said, "Let food be thy medicine, and thy medicine shall be thy food." Very apropos. Also, nature itself is the best physician and the one I love the most. After a lifetime of work, he concluded all disease begins in the gut. So I think you just got to kind of remember that as we go through this and understand that this gentleman did not have a microscope. They did not understand pathology. They did not understand pathogens. He did this all based on observation, and yet 2,500 years later, he's dead on as to what's happening. So throughout this presentation, we're going to give you some basic setups, basic analogies, but we're also going to go into a little more in-depth science. Hang in there. It'll all come together. It'll make a lot of sense. We'll tell you how you can actually go out there and change the world. Dr. Patch Adams, one of my mentors and heroes, I love this saying. When looking for solutions, don't see what everyone else sees. See what everyone else chooses not to see. And I couldn't find anything that was more connecting the dots to the microbiome than what he's saying right here. Because as we go through this, it'll start making sense to you about how we live in this world of information and microbes and how they are connected. Speaking of information, food itself is information. Try to remember that no matter what happens as you go forward in your life, that what you bring into the human system, what you drink, what you breathe, what you eat, is information to the body. And when you're thinking of that, it's pretty much common sense when you look at food and decide, well, you know, what kind of information are we talking about, right? An avocado or a donut. We have choices to make. We have decisions to make. Which one is going to be the right decision and the right choice? I'm sure by the end, it'll make a lot more sense. So when we talk about this area called the microbiome, and for those of you that this all sounds kind of familiar, I've got some new stuff in here, so hang on. But it's always good to hear it again, as repetition is the mother of retention. But if you look just within the last 10 years, how many scientific studies, papers, conclusions, substantiated information is coming out about this microbiome, this home of your microbes in your body, and how it has a major influence in the health of who we are. It's really powerful when we understand what Hippocrates told us 2,500 years ago, that your health starts in your gut and how everything is connected to that. So if we look at a little bit of the simplicity of the anatomy here, talk about trillions of these little critters that live inside of us. And it's a symbiotic relationship. It means they need you and you need them. But they're kind of living in this area, not just the intestines all over, but they're living in this area and they're just kind of biding their time, and they go by the choices and decisions that you make and how they're going to operate. And that's powerful, because you'll see as we get near the conclusion how this is all put together. But all these little critters that we got that we don't see, but we're going to choose to see tonight, is about 6 pounds of body weight. All these different kinds of species. So this picture just kind of shows you in the different parts of the digestive system where all these different gram-negative, gram-positive bacteriums live, or these little critters. This is their home. But to understand that, you got to start at the beginning. It really is a bacterial world. And if we work with the bacteria, understand the bacteria, it's just unbelievable how many people you can help with natural health. If we start at the very beginning, when baby's in utero, it's a sterile environment. Baby doesn't have any microbes. Baby will pick up these microbes coming down the delivery canal. That will be its first introduction to the bacterial planet Earth. And these bacteria are critical, as I mentioned, symbiotic in life itself. But when we study that, we see that when mom does become pregnant, her whole biome changes a little bit to help that baby get a good boost. But things in the world are not always as clean and wonderful as we'd like them to be. There's environmental problems, there's stress, there's lifestyle changes that happen to us. Antibiotic exposures, right? Smoking, all these different things, and alcohol, all these things that we've learned to avoid during pregnancies. Not just because they're toxic, but what we know now is they change the microbial community, what is given to baby. So a lot of things come into play when we look at this. So these little diagrams here, A and B, what we find out is that during pre-pregnancy, mom has a certain what's called microbiota, or home of microbes, and it changes a little bit. And then as baby comes down to vaginal delivery, is inoculated, sometimes through fecal matter, vaginal excretions, all kinds of things are coming into baby. And then as we grow, that is inside of us, around us, on us, and kind of you want that to become what's called a healthy metabolic outcome. In situation B, we may have a mother who's maybe a little overweight, maybe doesn't have the best diet, maybe is a little toxic. These bacterial colonies are maybe not as good as what we would like, and those are passed on to the offspring and can have adverse metabolic outcomes. So bacteria present in the mother's birth canal comes to baby. That's where baby gets everything. And it is said that probably about the age of 3, you've pretty much got most of what you're going to get, including what the dog has given you, and the cat, and dad, and the siblings, and the grandparents, and everybody's contributing to this. And it has a big effect on what's happening. This is a slide that I could spend an hour on, and I won't, but if you could just take a minute to look this over and understand this with me. And this is what we look at when we see breastfed versus formula-fed infants, actually taking their fecal matter from these infants, and we categorize what kind of bacteria are in the bowel. And when we see breastfed babies over here, we have a different pie chart. And what I want to draw your attention to is the purple area. This is known as Bacteroidetes. These are the good guys. These are the plant lovers. These are important for adult, as we transition to adult. And then we see a blue area known as firmicutes. Now you should have some of those. It's okay to have some, about 10%. They're kind of more sugar loving, fat loving. But when we look at formula fed, what has happened to our Bacteroidetes? Our purple area has basically disappeared. And that's not a good start for baby. We have a huge difference in something called proteobacteria, which is kind of like a mishmash of different gram-negative and positive bacteriums. But look at the size of the firmicutes, going from a 10% to a 35% increase. And remember, these are the sugar lovers. These are the fat lovers. So I'm going to back up just for a second here so that, well, what kind of diet do we have with these moms? And what are we having from a vaginal delivery, and what are we having from breastfeeding? It also parlays into this particular pie chart here. So that should be an eye-opener to you. And don't panic. I mean, if we've had to have a C-section, yeah, we're going to have a different biome. If we couldn't breastfeed and we had to use formula, we're going to have a different biome. You have time to help that baby, hopefully by everything we talk about. So when I talk about this microbiome, the home of microbes, they're not only in the guts, they're everywhere. They're in our nose and our mouth and all of our skin. So this is just a little pie chart to show you that you've got these critters all over, in and out of you. Now, if you're sitting there kind of listening to this with somebody next to you, all you got to do is take your left hand and shake their left hand. And basically what you've done at that point is you share about 1/6 of your entire biome with that person. So congratulations. And now that you have those bacteria, please take care of them. But that's just a little visual to get you to understand how all these bacteria are interacting with us on planet Earth and how important they become. Now remember Patch Adams, when I said, choose to see what no one else sees. And this information is pretty powerful because it's only about 10 years old. We did a whole bunch of studies called the Human Microbiome Project. It took 10 years. We did the Human Genome Project. It took another 10 years. And we learned some things from this. That the tissues in baby, as we're growing into a human, the tissues in the brain and the gut come from the same tissue. That was a revelation. So we know that the enteric nervous system, enteric means intestines, and our central nervous system, our brain and spinal cord, come from the same jib. And now as we study that, we start to realize that there's a communication that's happening between what's in the gut and what's going to the brain. Some people call this the second brain or second gut. It's a nervous system. This whole gut area has about 600 million neurons that interacts with food and your microbes and actually sends signals to the brain, good or bad. And that creates a whole different understanding of what's happening to us as humans. It's basically more than a gut feeling. So what we start to see is that this connection becomes very important when we talk about the microbiome. And there are so many other things we'll talk about that are connected to it as well. But what we found out is that that microbiome has a significant influence on what's happening with our brain, our moods, our behaviors, psychosis. There's a connection going back and forth, and even stressful events can influence that microbiome, which in turn can influence the brain. And there can be short and long-term effects from that. So again, that's new information. So a lot of times, let's talk about a situation like depression. We know that if somebody has depression, they have very low levels of a feel-good hormone called serotonin. What we know now is 90% of that serotonin is made in the guts. So if we're treating the head, we're not even in the right spot. So this is the kind of information that is pretty powerful in how this gut bacteria plays in all these different roles. It has crucial roles in digesting our food. We know that. It has crucial roles in modulating the immune system. 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your guts. It defends us against pathogens and foreign invaders. And then there's this whole emerging new science, and believe me, there's a lot of it. I read this every day, and I read this 24/7 because I'm on all these sites, and I get all these little bells and whistles that are telling me a new study, a new thing. One of the big things going on now is something called postbiotics. And you've heard of prebiotics, right? Postbiotics are basically what comes from all these critters in our guts. They make molecules, and they're needed to make enzymes work and to signal the body and the brain, and also the metabolism. And that's a key word here, that not only are we affecting the brain, immune system, digestion, but metabolism or energy. So they're responsible for a lot of stuff, and they interact with us. And they can even influence our gene expression. Well, what does that mean? Something called epigenetics or epigenomics is just the idea that, yeah, you may be predisposed to a problem. You may have predisposition to diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, any number of problems that run in your family. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. Your genes have to be turned on in order for that to happen. There has to be an influence to them. And guess what? Even these microbes, if they're not in balance or they're out of balance, may influence that expression. Isn't that fascinating? So when we talk about out of balance, this is known as dysbiosis. Basically out of balance. Whatever's happening in that gut is not a good colony. It's not a good amount of bacteria to create a healthy digestive system, immune system, and it even affects what's happening to our brain. So there's a lot going on there, and all the research is telling us that because of that connection, the enteric nervous system, the central nervous system, that's where even depression and anxiety can start coming from. I'm not saying that's all the cause, but wow, it's a powerful signal. So anything we can do to affect the guts in a positive way is going to help any human. Now this dysbiosis, common ones are too much alcohol abuse, antibiotics, and either taking them on a prescription basis too often, or maybe they're in our food supply or in the water supply, and even our diet. Remember, food is information. You know, should we eat an avocado or should we eat a donut? So dysbiosis is implicated in cardiovascular disease. So that's connected right to the pump. Fungal and bacterial overloads. We can get things like candidiasis, and we can get things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO. There's so many different things that can happen here. Irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, celiac, sprue. I could go on and on and on. But the biggest one that we're finding out in all the research I've been reading in the last couple of months, obesity. You saw that all the way back when we talked about baby, starting out with Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes, highly implicated in what's happening to us as a society. So we know if we can affect in a positive way dysbiosis and return that back to normal, we're going to create a lot of good benefits. And this is going to help us with things like prediabetes and the big one, metabolic syndrome. If you want to explain what metabolic syndrome is to people, just say it's a lifestyle disorder. You know, what I do every day is when people come into my office, especially first-time customers, tell me what you had for breakfast. Tell me what you had for supper last night. Tell me what you had for lunch the day before. And pretty much you can figure out very quickly that diet can be a big issue, but also other things that they do and habits that they have. It can contribute because the guts get messed up to what's called metabolic syndrome. And it's defined as your glucose, when it's fasting, is too high. Blood pressure can be abnormal. There can be abnormal lipids, even polycystic ovarian syndrome, but obesity being a significant factor. So this metabolic syndrome, kind of turns us into pre-diabetics and diabetics. And that's about $3.5 trillion. So there's a lot of things connected to the gut. So I always explain it as a lifestyle disorder, and you can change your lifestyle. How prevalent is it? Well, we're talking 1 in 3 adults right now already have this, and that's 2009. Estimates now tell us that it'll probably be 2 in 3 by 2050. That means 2 out of 3 adults will be either pre-diabetic or diabetic and have these high blood pressures and bad lipids and cholesterols and all these different things happening to them. And, you know, hey, where's it coming from? It's coming from the gut. But even normal people who don't look obese, can they develop this type of problem? Well, sure. 1 in 4 have prediabetes and are metabolically obese. So if we test all the labs, you'll find 1 in 4 of these types of people have the same problem. So if you think about that, you start understanding very quickly it has a lot to do with what's happening to the guts or the microbiome. So anything we can do to help that, we're going in the right direction. So bear with me. I'll put all this together at the end and it will make sense. Now there's something called metabolic endotoxemia. Endo means inside or the intestine. Toxemia, there's toxins in the blood. So we have a human with a microbiota in the digestive tract. And if that starts to get dysbiotic or out of balance, and we've got too many bad guys, not enough good guys, what happens is they start to, if you look over on the far right here, start to chew apart the intestinal lining. It's called the epithelium, and it becomes permeable, or what we call leaky gut. So these bacteria are releasing their own end products, or what we call postbiotics, which is kind of chewing away at our epithelium, and then things start to leak into the body. And that builds up in our muscles, and it gets into our fat tissue and attacks the liver, and the liver's trying to take care of all that and even can affect the brain. So these levels start becoming very high, almost 2 to 3 times what is considered normal. Just a little example of what some of these postbiotic or metabolic byproducts from these bacteria are. These are terms you may want to Google and understand, or just learn and explain to people. Is something called LPS and ZONULIN. LPS stands for lipopolysaccharide. You don't have to write that down. But basically, we could draw blood, and if the LPS levels in the blood are 2 to 3 times higher, well, where's that coming from? It's coming from basically those bacteria that are working on that epithelial tissue, degrading it, making it leak, and that gets into the bloodstream. Next thing you know, you've got inflammation attacking everything. Your immune system is becoming overreactive. There's even studies that are talking about this is probably implicated in autoimmune disorders. So it isn't just, you know, ulcerative colitis and rheumatoid arthritis, it's all of them. But cell walls of bacteria have these compounds like LPS, and they leak into the bloodstream. So sometimes even if you put people on cleanses, they feel better for a while, but then after a while they don't feel so good again. Well, if you don't change what you're doing and change that biome, you're going to go right back where you started. And we get this systemic overload. Zonulin is what you see as a postbiotic or molecule from too much gluten. So all of these things are vastly contributing to what's happening to the body all the way around, systemically. Then what happens is the cells become insulin resistant. Now we're headed for pre-diabetes or diabetes. Affects the brain, we already talked about that. Even muscle pains. And then one of the worst things that we're seeing today, which is an epidemic, is fatty liver. This is just a cutaway view, so if you look at the top of this diagram, this is basically an intestinal lining only about 1 millimeter thick. We're looking at this little square area, so if we blow that up, you'll see there's these cells, epithelial cells, that are lining the intestine. Up on top, these little fingers, we call those villi. And this is where, when food and particles and chemicals are coming across the top of the villi, this is how we feed ourselves. This is how we absorb nutrients, through these villi. But if there's a lot of these LPSs, zonulins, these postbiotics, they kind of chew away at the junctions of these cells. They make openings. The intestine becomes thinner, and that can leak right down, right into the bloodstream. Now, if that's circulating through your bloodstream, what do you think your body's doing with that information? Well, it's saying, hey, I don't know where all these toxins are coming from. Where are those? They just keep showing up. Well, it's going to cause inflammation and a lot of systemic overload. And the more that happens, the thinner the intestines become. So this leaky gut is a real thing. and these bacterial toxins leak beyond the barrier, and everything keeps getting weaker. If that's continuing, then the problems that someone is having, I don't care what the diagnosis is, that's what you got to fix. Otherwise, you're never going to get back to where you need to be. And again, that contributes to this area of, are we beginning to see what no one else sees? Yeah, well, all of those bacterial toxins and overloads end up in the liver, and the liver saying, hey, didn't I just get rid of that stuff? And it just keeps coming. And then it becomes a little fatty. And we got steatotic hepatosis, even to cirrhosis, all the way to the big C. And we see that in about 75% of the entire obese population. And as I said before, this is an epidemic. And this is not a good road to be on. So again, we've got to figure out how to correct this. We know from something called fecal transplants, we can actually take fecal matter and transplant it to another human. This has been done in many, many areas around the world outside of the US, like the Netherlands, where they work with obese patients, and they found that insulin response time doubled in just 6 weeks after they did a fecal transplant from somebody who was lean and healthy. So somebody who was kind of sick and they were becoming diabetic, they would take fecal matter from someone who was healthy and transplant this, and they got better. So that was an eye-opener to a lot of people that, oh, okay, so if we transplant better bacteria into the guts, we can actually reverse these problems. Even Harvard weighed in on this. Now, a lot of people, when they're obese, they may opt for a very invasive surgery like gastric bypass. And what Harvard did is they showed that diet and gastric bypass did shift the microbiome because it decreased those firmicutes, remember the sugar lovers, and it increased the Bacteroidetes, the plant lovers. So yeah, the operation helped. And then of course, changing their diet, their lifestyle, it helped too. But this is what was really interesting. They also said that, you know, if you shift that gut bacteria with diet, and that can take quite a while, to an abundance of beneficial bacteria, you get the same results. That should make you pause. You know, the next time you have somebody that's considering this type of surgery, I would quote Harvard. You know, if you could change your diet and change your microbiome, you're going to get the same results as a very invasive surgery with many different complications. That coming from Harvard. Nori genes. This is a way to understand a concept called horizontal gene transfer. And don't worry about that name. But what we know now, again, this is all new information, is that bacteria in our bodies have to adapt to wherever we live, whatever we decide to eat. And so when we look at things like nori genes, we start learning something, that our microbiome really responds to what we eat. So you may have heard, yeah, we are what we eat, right? But nori genes taught us something different. Like the Japanese, they eat a lot of seaweed. Well, guess what? No human can digest seaweed. However, your microbes can, if they have something called a nori gene. So these bacteria are what they call marine bacteria. We don't find that in the Caucasian population because we don't live on seaweed. What has that taught us? It taught us that, hey, nobody can digest seaweed, but your bacteria can. So in other words, taking in certain plants, taking in kelp, certain things like this, you are what you absorb. And you're only going to absorb what your bacteria can break down. So I teach this concept to everyone that comes to my office. And these nori genes, this horizontal gene transfer, they give it to each other, now shows us that we are what our microbes eat. In other words, we may not be able to break down a seaweed or a fiber, but the correct microbes can. So I always teach this to people, that we are what we eat, and they go, yeah, I heard that one. Well, you hear about we are what we absorb. Yeah, sometimes they hear it, sometimes they don't, but most people do not hear the one, we are what our microbes eat. So if we don't have the proper microbes, we're going to have a little bit of a difficulty with that. And I'll give you an example of that in a little bit. Now, to put all this together so that you can explain it to people, so that you can be out there and say, you gotta listen to what I'm telling you here. And you can use these slides. They're on a PDF. You can download them and teach this to people. I use the analogy called the 3 R's and the fish tank analogy. The fish tank represents your guts, intestinal lining. It's the container. And then the fish represent your probiotics or your microbes. So do we want a tank that looks like this, where the water's bad, the pH is off, the fish are sick, everything's dying, it's polluted, it's toxic, it's got parasites? How are we going to feel? What's going to happen to our brain? What's going to happen to our immune system? What's going to happen to our metabolic syndrome? It becomes very easy for people to visualize what you're teaching. And so in order to turn things around, we do what's called the 3 R's. And they are reset or remove, repair, and replenish. This is a basic functional medicine concept that works. Probably everybody that's listening in some way, shape, or form probably has worked in this area already with cleansing and using herbal supplements and changing people's diets. Well, you've kind of been doing this already, and that's why gut health is so critical and important to changing anybody's problems. But what we're going to do is talk about how we can tackle all 3 of these in the right way, the right programs, and get everything done correctly. Before we move on, I just want to say this. I talk to a lot of naturopaths all the time, and a lot of them are saying, oh yeah, I read that about probiotics. Yeah, I know all kinds of things about probiotics, and oh yeah, I use them in my clinic. I use them in my store. But what you got to understand is you can't just take probiotics willy-nilly, and we'll go into this a little more in depth, because if you go back up here, and that's what I want to do is just back up for a second. What would happen if I went and bought $40 worth of probiotics and dumped it into this fish tank? Most likely, they'll all die. So you got to understand these concepts of the 3 R's. You do this, you're way ahead of the curve. You're way ahead of everybody else that's out there. You must remove or reset the fish tank. How do you do that? Well, you detox, you eliminate things from the body, anything that would negatively affect that biome, right? Those could be antibiotics and smoking and lack of sleep, medications. You get the idea. Environmental chemicals, pollutants, accumulated waste, right? Sometimes we eat too much. It's an overabundance of food, or we get too many beverages that basically give you inflammation. They don't give you anything else. And it totally changes that biome to the wrong kind of gut bacteria, just like what we saw with breastfeeding versus formula fed. So you kind of got to remove everything a little bit, and then we want to repair. We want to encourage things that are going through that system into that fish tank that provide the right kind of support for healing, regenerating the gut lining, making it thicker, more self-contained so the fish tank doesn't leak. You do that by supplying the body with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, essential fatty acids, and especially amino acids like l-glutamine. And of course, plants. These fish that live in this tank, the good guys, love plants. They love fiber, even like fermentation. So, you know, when you think about food as information, remember the avocado and the donut? You start putting it all together. I did a presentation called Polyphenols versus Lectins a little while ago, which is out on Nature's Institute if you want to watch that. It's about an hour long, but it goes in much more in depth than I'm going to go here. But I want to talk about this because it's important. There's a lot of information out there about lectins and a lot of bad press, and we need to understand that they do serve a purpose. They help plants to survive in the wild, but when we studied these things, we found out that basically they just are like a protein that interacts with sugar, and it can be valuable in medicines and foods, but at times it's a little scary. They figured out biochemical weapons from things called lectins. But the problem is you can't avoid lectins. You can't. They're in cereal grains, they're in beans, they're everywhere. So many foods contain lectins that when we eat more than what we should or undercook them, that affects our biome, which in turn affects the immune system. We get nutrient deficiency. And again, leaky gut. So we got to counteract what's called lectins. And the good news is nature is one step ahead of us. Nature created something called polyphenols. But if you're not eating them, you're not correcting the lectins and you're causing that fish tank to leak. So these are known as flavonoids, and they counteract what's called the lectin overload, and they help repair the intestinal lining. Just give you one example here of ginkgo biloba being one of the latest ones they keep looking at. And what we know, as I mentioned before, is that some of these things are very poorly absorbed. So even when they looked at ginkgo biloba being taken as a supplement form, there are some people that don't absorb it very well. And that's because why? Well, they don't have a good biome. Remember, it's what the bacteria eat. So if we have a lot of good bacteria, we have a good gut, we can greatly metabolize it, break it down, get those flavonoid byproducts or polyphenols, and heal the gut and help the brain. So in other words, we may not be able to digest ginkgo, but our microbes can. And now they've looked at things like ginseng and they found the same thing, that about 1 in 5, 1 in 6 people on planet Earth cannot absorb ginseng. It doesn't mean that the herb doesn't work. It means they don't have the microbes to do it. So it's always about the gut health. It takes good guts to be healthy. That's what this whole thing is all about. Now, plant-based diets really can be very powerful here. It doesn't mean we can't use animal proteins like a good, clean, unfiltered whey. That's very good for the biome as well. But it helps with a greater diversity of bacteria. If we're running a lot of plants and fiber and fermentation into that fish tank, everything will correct itself. And these microbes can kind of break down proteins from them, like broccoli can be 40% protein, and it ferments it. And this also creates a better fish tank, a better pH, a better system inside the tank versus a donut. So this isn't rocket science. So if you just kind of use these concepts when you're teaching this to people, then it really helps them understand what it is you're offering. What else repairs a leaky gut? Well, I mentioned amino acids before. L-glutamine, I call it glue. Glutamine glue is the major fuel source for intestinal cells and basically can help with this tearing of the epithelial lining and create a tighter junction. That way, these postbiotics, these molecules, can't make their way into the bloodstream. Legumes do this. They're a rich source of glutamine and basically help with that gut lining, or in this case, actually stop the fish tank from leaking. But you got to get it in there to work. Fiber-rich diets, we call these prebiotics, also creating something called postbiotics, but in a good way, make a big difference as to what's happening to the microbiome. They affect the composition of that microflora, but you got to get enough fiber for that to happen. And it's been studied time and time again that the more fiber we get, we have a higher amount of healthy bacteria and we get thicker guts. And then in turn, the insulin resistance goes down. The lipids go back in line. This is not where we are recommending a medication. No, this is where we're saying, hey, you can affect a lot of those metabolic markers in those labs if you understand how they got messed up to begin with. A great source of fiber, the best source of fiber, and they've all been studied, believe me, is inulin. It's number one. It comes from chicory root. The second would be Jerusalem artichoke. These are two things that, I have Jerusalem artichokes in my fridge. I eat one a day, not a whole one, but pieces of it every single day. It's because I need to make sure that I'm getting this right fish food into my tank. And the microbes, they can ferment those things. You can't break them down, but the microbes can. They digest what you can't. And they'll make things like short chain fatty acids and all these different things that are more food for the other fish. So they take care of themselves if you put the right things in the tank. And that's where we got to come back to where we started. What kind of information are we giving those fish? Let's go back to this for a second. Just ask yourself this. Of these two, which one is more plant-based? Of these two, which one contains more fiber? It's pretty easy when you start looking at foods to make the right decision. and say, yeah, I'd really like that donut, but it's not really a good plant base because man stripped it of everything. And there's no fiber. It's just basically sugar, very high in lectins. There's no polyphenols here. It's the wrong decision. And even fermentation, that can apply. I like to get fermentation in every day. I just had supper before I started with this, and of course it contains sauerkraut. You can use apple cider vinegars. I just put this in as informational. Arizona State showed us it's best at night. It helps with lowering blood glucose. But sauerkraut, kimchi, beet kvass, miso, kombucha, tubers, right, like yucca. Now, hopefully they're non-pasteurized. I try to make my own. Kefir actually has a longer effect on the biome than even yogurts. That's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So again, ask this when you make a food choice for the fish. Is it a plant? Does it have fiber? Or is it fermented? How easy is that? Because it also parlays even into blood type diets and all these different things that we've learned about as naturopaths. But as long as it meets one of these criteria, you're going in the right direction. So now you can see very easy why, plant-based protein shakes, they really make a lot of sense. I do them every morning. Prebiotics, I call these fish foods, are things like that inulin we talked about. They're non-digestible fibers. Your bacteria ferment them. Also, things like fructooligosaccharides, that's fish food. Guar gum, that's a fiber. You get the idea. And they're found in various foods. Inulin, though, is a very powerful prebiotic, as I mentioned. Best one studied for its effects. And studies have shown that if we get a lot of inulin into the body, it helps with what's going on with our blood sugars and reductions in weight gain, fat mass, especially visceral fat, and the whole thing about metabolic endotoxemia. If we can cut that weight back, would the brain be better? Would the immune system become better? Of course. And if you look at this chart, what's the number one fish food? Chicory root, or inulin. You can see the fructooligosaccharides, which is fish food. You can see the grams of fiber. It's very high. There's nothing higher on the chart than this one. And then there's Jerusalem artichoke. And you even see our herbs like dandelion and garlic. It goes right on down the list. And I often look at this as an herbalist and I say, 25 years ago when I started, this is the kind of stuff I was recommending, was fiber and herbs. And I guess I was going in the right direction. I just didn't know what I was doing. Now I do. And the third R is to replenish or restore those fish. But as I showed you in the beginning, don't just be willy-nilly taking probiotics and throw them into a sick tank. You got to kind of remove and repair that tank. And then we want to get those good probiotics into the gut. And if we feed them correctly going forward, you're not going to have any problems at all. Now, what is important in supplementation, this is critical, is quality and safety of strain, not counts. That comes from the International Probiotics Association. They should know what they're talking about. In other words, I have customers that come in and say, yeah, well, I saw this probiotic supplement at, the pharmacy store and it's 500 billion gazillion colony count. Irrelevant, because if the quality isn't there, they're probably all dead. There's been studies that they've taken many probiotics off the shelf and found out that 100% of what's in the capsule is dead. So your quality is very important. And then also safety of strains. We have studied very well about a dozen probiotics that can be taken with nothing but positive effect. We don't want to just grab this strain or that strain or this strain and throw it in there, because you want it to balance itself. But you do want to replace them a little bit because they do take a beating. For example, this is just kind of a fun fact, 50% of your fecal matter is dead bacteria. So it makes sense to kind of put a few new guys back in the fish tank. So probiotic supplements, I think, are critical. I take them every day. I will the rest of my life. They help maintain beneficial communities, get a better population. And when that happens, you crowd things with nothing but good guys. And when the bad guys come in, there's no room at the end, right? You kind of inhibit this invasion of what we call pathogens. because they just come in there and go, you know, this is not a good fish tank for me. I'm not going to stick around. And that's what you want to have happen. You want this Bacteroidetes, these bifidobacteria. And we know that they will kind of self-regulate the entire environment to keep it happy and healthy. But you got to help them out a little bit. So this is the kind of fish I want, right? I want happy, smiley, happy fish. I don't want sick and dying and questionable fish in my tank. Now, probiotics are very, very popular. They're the highest selling ingredient in U.S. natural channels. That and protein shakes. They're 1 and 2, no matter what you look at. Well, there's a reason for that, because as you're learning already just from listening to this, you're starting to understand how powerful they really are. And probiotics will be the fastest growing supplement in North America by 2021. Well, again, is anyone teaching the 3 R's, or are they just saying go buy probiotics? And then I mentioned those subsets like postbiotics. And then there's even one called immunobiotics, which are designer probiotics. So this whole thing is exploding and getting bigger by the minute. And then you even see shampoos with probiotics in them. Don't waste your money. There's no evidence, nothing exists at this time to suggest they work or that they even survive inside the bottle. And they have done studies where they put it on the scalp and they put it on the skin and they did not grow. So that's just a gimmick. But we're going to take them internally. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, quality and safety is critical, not colony counts. Please educate your customers on this. Bigger is not better. But you want a good probiotic that's good manufacturing, practice, verification, someone that's doing studies, making sure it has a shelf life and that it can survive before you recommend it or sell it. You got to love those probiotics. They're critical. And they maintain a healthy microbiome, and they get our polyphenols from foods and herbs, and that's what counteracts those lectins. And they help the health of the entire cardiovascular system, blood pressure, inflammation, the brain blood flow. We talked about that. But look at blueberries. Evidence suggests to provide these flavonoids reduces toxic exposure to the brain. Just one little tiny berry. So every morning when I have a protein shake, a veggie protein shake, that's what I do. I always add a handful of blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, currants, grapes. I want those polyphenols because sometimes, hey, I'm going to have a piece of bread or I'm going to have something that's questionable with lectins. I want to make sure that I'm countering that for my probiotics. I want to give them the food they need. Green tea, shown to reduce damage in neural tissues. That's our brain. And increase glutathione, which is the most powerful antioxidant in the human body. Green tea does that, but guess what? You're not digesting a lot of those little pieces of green tea leaves. Your bacteria are. That's what's so cool, is that they're helping us and we're helping them. Cardiometabolic disorders, as we mentioned, and this is one of the fastest growing epidemics worldwide, but with a good fish tank, good probiotics, good fiber, good plants, it can even lower cholesterols. Fermented vegetables, prebiotic containing foods, reduce blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterol, help us with weight loss. What a great side benefit. Decreases our toxin producing bacteria, so we get away from endotoxemia. And then if you look at a new study from Nutrients in 17, the lactobacillus rhamnosus has greater appetite control. We feel full longer. Our brains and our emotions become better. So that whole thing is being managed with a great fish tank. That is so cool. I hope you're as excited about this as I am, because this is not what we want, right? And this is a lot of people that are walking into you asking for help. I've got this problem, I got this symptom, I've got these labs, I've got this, and my blood pressure is up. And don't let that overwhelm you. Sit down a little bit, talk to them about the fish tank, and then show them a lot of these slides and say, this is probably what's happening to you inside. But what do we really want? We want a beautiful, wonderful ecosystem, happy fish, right? We want a gorgeous fish tank. May you all have a gorgeous fish tank. Thank you so much. And we'll turn it over to Scott and take a few questions and answers. So thanks for hanging in there. I appreciate it.
Fantastic, Dr. J. Absolutely. Spot on information, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people taking lots of notes and learning a lot of excellent items that they can incorporate into their daily regimens. So we have had several good questions come in, and we'll just quickly go through maybe 3 or 4, and then we'll jump to the final portion of our webinar tonight. Francis is asking a question about Crohn's disease and how it might affect somebody trying to reach a stable microbiome. Could you speak to that?
Right. So if we look at a condition like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, what we know is it's an autoimmune disorder. We know that there are high amounts of C-reactive protein. We know there's a lot of inflammation. We know there's ulceration of the lining of the intestine. So if you listen to this whole presentation, I think we already answered that. So is it something that we would want to go in that direction? Yes. But in that situation, by the time people are coming to you and they got full-blown Crohn's, they're probably heavily medicated at this point. A lot of them are on prednisones or on all kinds of different stuff, right? So you've got to work from an integrative approach. We're not here to replace what their doctors are doing. We want to work with their doctors. Now, those people still have to eat, and those people still have to try to correct this condition. But I think if you explain this whole presentation to somebody with Crohn's, they'd start going, okay, I've got to change my diet. I've got to change my lifestyle. I've got to do things differently. My advice here is make sure that, you educate them well and go slow. In this case, I probably would not, on the 3 R's, do a lot of what's called removal. I wouldn't be putting these people on a heavy-duty cleanse. They're just too weak. They got too thin of intestines. I'd be thinking more repair. I want to calm everything down. I'd definitely be doing vegetable protein shakes. I'd definitely be doing probiotics. I might even bring in something like berberine. So just start slow with those individuals. Make sure that their doctors are okay with what you're doing. But yes, this is exactly what we're talking about. This irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, all these different things. It's all connected. So great question.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. J. A handful of people are inquiring about being able to listen to this information again, or where they can find more similar types of information. At the beginning of our webinar, you mentioned a project that you're keenly involved in, and that is our partnership, our friendship with a group called Nature's Institute.
Right.
And do you want to speak to that a little bit? What are some of the things that can be found there, and how do they access Nature's Institute?
Right. So the first part of that question is, are there similar webinars or presentations like this? Yes. And they are loaded on the website, naturesinstitute.com. Anyone can go there. Anyone, friend, family, don't care. Just have them go to the website. They can sign in with login, and there's tons of free information. You can surf and read articles, and there's all kinds of free stuff on there. But in conjunction with that, we have a lot of what's called modules. And these modules are designed to take someone and say, well, I don't want to be a pro, I just want to get my feet wet. Well, you can take a couple modules and become certified in natural health. And then there are higher levels of certification if you wish to go higher. And so what we call subscription rate, that allows you access to everything. We just loaded a new webinar out there on autism from Dr. Patricia Knox, which is just unbelievable. It was so good. So there's all this great, what we call third-party information. We designed this website so that we could bring good information like tonight's presentation out there. But we have to be careful that, we don't promote products certain by names or companies by names, right? And that's what we're still in the Q&A part of this. So we want to be able to bring that to you so that you can teach other people, you can learn from that, go out there, access these things on your own. It is a website that is built for naturopaths. It's built for you, and with help from everybody out there. It's integrative, it's natural health, it's an educational website. There's going to be podcasts on there. There's going to be all kinds of things, and videos and articles and quizzes. We're just getting going on this thing. And just so people know, and I want everybody to hear this, this is not a profit website. This is a website that does require subscriptions to get in deeper and get all the juicy stuff, but there's a lot of free stuff. Make no mistake about it. You'll have to go look at it yourself. But we want to basically self-fund it. In other words, we do need subscription rates from people so that the money can produce more videos, get more speakers, more doctors, more herbalists, more articles, You know, we're going to load like 100 articles from Stephen Horn, and we've got all these different people out there. And Dr. Rodier, you might remember him. We've got all kinds of people lined up, but it takes money to do stuff like that. So I'm not trying to do a sales pitch here. I just want you to understand that if you do invest, you're investing in yourself and your business and your downlines. So it's good stuff. Yeah, we have a lot of people out there, and everything has come back positive so far. So, and then if you have ideas, information, you could even go through, there's a contact site. You can contact us and say, hey, I'd love it if you talk about this, or did you consider that? We're open to every idea.
Fantastic. Dr. J, thank you. And again, I know you're very much involved in that organization, so we appreciate your efforts to continue getting this great information out to us. Just maybe one more two-part question about probiotics, and then we'll jump into the final portion. Someone is wondering, Tracy's wondering, if it's okay to add probiotic to a shake, say a protein shake. And then the second part to the question is it possible for someone to take too many probiotics? Mm-hmm.
Those are good questions. We had similar questions like that before about, you know, when do you take a probiotic? Look, I've studied this up and down and sideways, and I've seen the pros and the cons, and most of it is opinion. There's nothing really out there that's scientific to say you must take a probiotic on an empty stomach, you must take it with food. Here's what I tell people. There's a really good study out there that says supplements that sit on a shelf and don't get taken don't work. So I often tell my customers, I don't care how you get it in there, just get it in there. You want to open it up and put it in a shake, some will get through. It's the law of large numbers. You want to replenish. But as I showed on the slides previously, it's not about counts. You know, can you take too many? Well, I can't say yes to that, but what I can say is what you can do is you may take the wrong kinds of probiotics. In other words, Joe Blow's on the internet telling you about this new strain, oh, it does this and it's magic. Yeah, well, I don't know if I would go that route because you don't know what you'll do to that population of the fish tank. So what we want to do is give a little, not a lot. But if you're doing the 3 R's and you're removing occasionally and you're repairing and then you're replenishing gently, you're doing it perfectly. So it's not about throwing massive amounts in there. You could actually upset everything and create a civil war. So those are great, great questions. I appreciate that. I hope that's clear. And I think in the next little information I cover, it'll all make sense.
Okay. Very good. And let's go there now. And as we're going there, a couple of people are still inquiring about a PDF of the slides from our presentation. That should be available on your control panel to download. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, you still have a few minutes to get it downloaded. In the event that for some reason it's just not working for you and you're unable to get a copy of the slides, if you'd like to send me an email, I'll be happy to place a copy of the slides back in an email back to you. My email address is Scott T. SCOTTT, so 3 T's are the key, Scott T at natr.com, and I will try and get those right back to you. So Dr. J, you've just done an excellent job helping us understand the science, everything that leads up to why we need to have this. And now let's talk about the how we can get the information in. So can you continue your discussion and talk about some specific ingredients, some specific formulas that can help us out?
Right. Thanks, Scott. Everybody just hang in there for a little bit. Now, you've probably heard about this thing called IN.FORM, and we call it the metabolic age support, and it does come in a kit. But what's powerful here is it does exactly what we just talked about. Do not think of this as weight loss. That is only the side benefit of what we're doing. As I talked throughout the presentation, it's the power of the microbiome. And everything that's been done here has been clinically studied. It's proprietary, means it's exclusive to what we've done. It's even patent pending. You know, when you're onto something that's good, you're going to apply for a patent. So this whole kit that you're looking at right here, you see there are, in this case, what's called a pea protein shake. Very easy on the body. Got a lot of inulin in it. It's got phytosterols. It's got a number of different plant types of foods that help regulate the metabolism. It contains something called a probiotic, which has the right amount of strains and not too many. Very high quality, very safe. We have a product in there called berberine. Boy, if you ever get time to look up berberine, it's almost miraculous. It fights off the bad bacteria, encourages the good. It helps you with insulin resistance. Gee, I wonder why it's in there. We also have something called a cardio kit, which you've got the right essential fatty acids, the right antioxidants, the right vitamins and minerals. It's all in there. I call it ragu. It's in there, right? You don't have to think. And it makes it very easy for people to do this, to change their whole biomes in the right way, in going after that microbiome, which in turn makes a better brain, better immune system, better metabolism. And there's nothing else like this on the market. There are other companies that try to mimic this and come close, but none of them have clinically studied it. And you can also get into the whole IN.FORM aspect of it and get yourself a coach, somebody who can walk you through it, help you with dietary choices. You have group support. So when you're working with other people, people can hold you accountable. We even have something called a biotracker, which does about 10 different things. It'll tell us, what's going on with our hydration, our bone density, our visceral fats, like those fatty liver things that we worry about. All of this can be tracked so we can see our progress in real time. But the most important part, whenever somebody else comes to me and says, hey, I heard about this program from my chiropractor or Joe Blow down the street, I always say, is it clinically tested? And the answer will always be no. So that's your calling card. That's what you should be telling people. And what's it really doing? Focusing on the biome, removing things gently, repairing that fish tank, and replenishing that fish tank. That's what's powerful to me. And when you look at how important is that microbiome, just look at this slide for a second. Most modern programs that focus only on the results of metabolic disorder, IN.FORM shifts the focus to the cause. So if we get a better gut, a better microbiome, what does it help? Well, our nerves, our lungs, our hormones, our weight, our skin, our immune system, our blood sugars, our cardiovascular health. That's pretty much everything. So, here, this is like, in my opinion, very well-kept secret that shouldn't be a secret. Everybody should be talking about how easy this is, that we can just recommend these types of kit products that have everything in it that does everything I just talked about. It's that simple. Now, this is all figured out by the Hughes Center for Research and Innovation, and they conducted independently reviewed clinical studies to show how this really works. And they did it in just 90 days. They took 2 groups of people. These were generally healthy people, but they had some biomarkers that were kind of pointing, you're headed down maybe not the best road. And they were monitored. And you had one group that basically did diet and exercise, and then you had a second group that did diet and exercise, but with the supplements that were showing in the IN.FORM protocol. And what did you find out when you did that after 90 days? It was incredible. The group who got the products had a much better outcome because, again, we're getting those plant proteins, we're getting that berberine, we're getting those probiotics, everything that's helping that whole microbiome. And I love these slides because you see reduction not only in body weight as a side benefit, and I never sell this as weight loss. I sell this as anti-aging. Reduction of fat mass, triglycerides, blood pressure, total cholesterols, bad cholesterols. I don't know any medication that can tackle all of that. I mean, that's just unheard of. It's just phenomenal, and this has to be shared with people. I think it's just over the top as to what's happening. And how does it compare to what anybody else is doing? Well, if you look at other commercial weight loss programs, they don't even come close. 56% more weight loss, 65% more fat loss. And these blood pressures right here, I show this to medical doctors in Northeast Wisconsin, and their eyes pop out. They're like, how are you dropping those blood pressures like that? And I said, well, because we're focusing on the microbiome. And it's like new information to them. But when they see these studies, they just can't help but say, well, yeah, I'm going to start recommending people to you. Yeah, go right ahead. This is easy. Anyone can do it. So it's just, to me, a no-brainer. This whole kit is just designed with that in mind. When compared to published studies on a lot of popular brand name programs, it outperforms anything else out there. And when you've got something that can beat everybody in the market, Why aren't you screaming from the top of the hill? This is unbelievable. You know, and I see it in my own practice. I'd probably say 7 out of 10 people that I see now, I'm just kind of recommending they go this route because it's just, you can't argue with the studies. And then when they come in 3-6 months later and their whole lives have changed and their labs are getting better and their doctors are commenting and everybody in their family is saying, what are you doing? That's money well spent. You know, so I think in conclusion, you really have to look at this whole presentation just to see what no one else is looking at, and that's the microbiome. And Hippocrates was right 2,500 years ago, and that we have to make the right decisions when we decide on foods. And we know that 1 in 3 people already are in a world of hurt. They're in this metabolic disorder. They're headed to diabetes. And 2 to 3 by 2050. What are we really doing with these kits? We're applying the 3 R's. It's doing it for you. You don't even have to think. It's helping you reset, repair, replenish. You know, so I hope everyone listening and everyone that you know that you talk to has the best fish tank that can be as beautiful as it can be. It just gets me excited, Scott. I don't know what else I can say.
But we can tell.
Yeah, but that's the kind of fish we want, right? We want big, smiley fish.
That's right.
We don't want
Absolutely.
sick fish. We want happy fish. We got happy fish. We got a happy everything. So it's exciting.
Well said, Dr. J. Thank you again so much for your passion, your knowledge, just your willingness to share what it is that you've learned over so many years with all of us. The country's a little bit healthier tonight, thanks to you. So we appreciate that great,
thank you.
Great information. Thank you. And folks, as we wrap up, we'd like to let you know that starting today, we are introducing at Nature Sunshine a fun little program for the summer, a fun little campaign we're calling Reset Breakfast. You see that at the top of this slide, the hashtag sign and then the words Reset Breakfast. We're inviting you to help us take back breakfast and rebalance our microbiome along the way. What we're suggesting is that you and the people you work with start your day with a high quality protein. And then you now will know the need to add a probiotic. We have several great probiotics here at Nature Sunshine. Then we also encourage you to accelerate that detoxification process with a relatively new product we call Purify. On this particular slide, you'll see a nice little package we've put together with 3 different kinds of proteins that you can purchase. And when you purchase a package similar to this, that contains 3 proteins, 1 bottle of our IN.FORM metabolic age support probiotics, the green bottle in front, we are going to give you free a box of our Purify, which is a 1-month supply of 30 individual envelopes that have all kinds of really good microbiome containing ingredients that, or ingredients I should say, that will strengthen your microbiome. Now, we have put together, I think about 13 or 14 different combinations of Nature Sunshine proteins in various amounts. For example, we have some packages that are all 11 Ps sugar-free. We have some that are just 3 packages of regular 11 Ps. We have packages similar to the one you see on the screen here where you would get 2 11 Ps and a package of Nature's Harvest. We just sent out an email earlier today that you hopefully got that will explain how all of this works, give you all the different cost-saving opportunities with the different packages that we have put together. You can also visit our website and go to our promotions page, and you'll find all of the same information there as well. But again, the idea is to choose a compilation of your favorite kinds of Nature Sunshine proteins, select 3 of them, include a bottle of our probiotic, and actually all of this is pre-designed for you. The packages are already created. You just choose the one of the 13 or 14 that looks the best to you. You purchase that, and we'll send you a box of our Purify, which has over a $50 value. We'll send that to you free of charge. So again, our fun campaign this summer is to reset breakfast. Here is a picture of myself and a few of our Nature Sunshine colleagues this morning as we were resetting our breakfast. Began our day here at home office. We invite you to do the same. And if you do something similar where you take a picture of you with a protein or a probiotic or even a Purify, take a picture of yourself with that product, and then we want to see the label of one of the products that you're taking. For example, here in this picture, right in the very center, you see one of our envelopes of our single serving packages of our IN.FORM chocolate whey protein, which is what most of us were drinking this morning. So take a picture of yourself with one of our breakfast type products, and you can go in the hopper to win some fun prizes that we'll be giving away throughout summer. So we invite you to share this hashtag on your favorite social media sites, be they Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, whatever you would like. Please get out and share the word, spread the word, and let's add to what Dr. J has done and help make our country just a little healthier and happier over the course of these next few weeks throughout summer. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for being part of our webinar this evening. We're confident that Dr. J has taught you some great new tools, techniques to add, and we invite you to join us again very soon, where we'll be back with more great information from Dr. J and some of his esteemed colleagues. We appreciate your partnership with us here at Nature Sunshine. Call us, let us know if there's anything that we can ever help you out with. If you're new to Nature Sunshine, feel free to look us up on the web. You can find our customer service number there and give our customer service number a call. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and we would love to welcome you to our ever-growing Nature Sunshine family. So have a wonderful rest of your evening. Dr. J, again, on behalf of the hundreds and hundreds of us that participated with you tonight, a great big thank you, and we wish you all a pleasant rest of your night and a wonderful week ahead. Thanks so much, and good night.